plan everything meticulously. If you leave anything to chance, even the smallest prop or the smallest item of clothing or an actor's hair or anything, if you leave it to chance, it's going to cause you grief on the day. So honestly, plan everything, plan everything, plan everything. I can't stress that more. Storyboard, so you have vision and you can communicate to that to the cast and crew. You might be able to see the film in your head, but they can't. So you need something to show them, and you also need a blueprint to work off. You can't just sort of go out there and make it all up as you go, because you'll probably run into trouble. You'll get camera angles that won't cut together, or you'll get issues in some way. Get the coverage that you need. That's my perspective from an editor. I started off in the business as an editor, so I approach directing the same way. Get the coverage that you need, storyboard properly. Hire good actors because they will elevate your material. Don't have any weak links in the chain. Don't bring on board amateur actors just because they're enthusiastic and they tell you that they want to be in movies and this sort of thing. You can do better. If you're looking at a bunch of actors and they're not impressing you, keep looking, keep searching until you find someone else. And you don't even have to find them in acting circles necessarily. I mean, I've worked with non-actors before who have had no experience, and they've given more natural performances than so-called professional stage actors, who can sometimes be a bit hammy or artificial. So basically, casting is everything, and make sure you get your casting right. Also, don't cast your film too early. That's a big trap that a lot of independent filmmakers fall into, because a lot of actors, they drift away. They move to Sydney or Melbourne, or they go to LA, or they get sick, or they put on weight, or they get pregnant, or this or that happens. I've had it happen to me numerous times in the past, and I try to avoid it. So nowadays I like to cast most of my actors as late as possible in the project, sometimes as late as only a few weeks before we start shooting. And I think that works out better that way, because they're enthusiastic and fresh and they're ready to jump in with both feet. But if you keep them waiting around for too long, they get bored and they get impatient and they think, well, there's nothing happening with your project, and they go off and they do other people's projects. So yeah, basically leave it as late as you can to start casting. Don't get too caught up in the idea that you have to have the latest and greatest of everything or the most expensive of everything. I mean, it's all very well and nice to dream about 6K cameras and massive cranes and all this other stuff, but at the end of the day, if you have to shoot on a budget, you can get some very good gear out there that'll do the job quite well and very professionally. And the camera we're shooting this interview on is a Sony A7S. It's not a cheap camera, but it's still within the reach of a lot of indie filmmakers. But you can go even cheaper if you need to and still get good results from an old Canon DSLR, or even a Sony A6000 or something like that. So that's why people are always amazed that I shot throwback on a Canon HV20 from 2007, and they say, why did you do that? And I say, well, I had a very low budget and I didn't need to really upgrade to a Red Epic or whatever was around at the time. I just didn't need to. I just needed to concentrate on my storytelling and characters and make the cinematography as good as I could. And so far it's worked out pretty well. I mean, I don't think there's been a single review we've had where people have said the cinematography looks terrible. Whereas, I've seen a lot of indie films that look beautiful and they were shot on 4K camera or whatever with this lens or that lens or whatever, but the story and characters don't engage, and the film drags on and the pacing is off, and you just think, well, if you'd spent more time on your script and workshopping it and getting the characters right and less time worrying about how many pixels you had, you would have had a better film. So they're my tips for up-and-coming filmmakers. And I guess if there's a sixth tip, it's just basically just keep going, just keep climbing those mountains, and when there's avalanches and you get knocked back, just get up and keep going, because it's a war of attrition, and there's no prizes for giving it a good try and then quitting. You've got to go all the way, you've got to see it through, so just keep going and you'll get there in the end if you've got enough passion.